And joining us now with more on the security situation in Israel is Lieutenant Colonel Amnon Shefler, the Israel Defense Forces spokesman for international media. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So how does Israel and the defense establishment view this shooting from the northern border?
We're aware of one rocket that was shot from southern Lebanon, and our current assessment is that this is a projectile that was launched by rogue terrorists aligned with the Palestinian factions in Lebanon. And we see this as a very, very serious event. We will not allow, and that is why we responded to these rockets, to this rocket. And our message is clear, both to the state of Lebanon and their government, to Hezbollah, and to any Palestinian terrorists and factions, that we will not allow this to continue.
Now, following this attack, should we expect an escalation on the northern front?
Well, we are a peace-seeking nation, and of course, we wish not to see any kind of escalation, not for the people of Israel, and also not for the people of Lebanon that are in a dire situation that is only being worsened by both Hezbollah terrorist organizations and others that are using that area to promote their terrorist activity. So we definitely wish not to see any kind of escalation. But if needed, then we are ready to protect our civilians.
Now, what else can you tell us about the attack? I mean, you mentioned that Israel does have an indication as to who is behind it. What details can you give?
We have an assessment. We don't know for 100% at this time who's behind this. We think that it is related to Palestinian fractions, as I mentioned. But it is, as we're saying, the responsibility of the state of Lebanon to make sure that anything that is happening in that area should be stopped by them. And we're sending a clear message, not only to the Palestinian factions that we believe it's probably them, but also to the Hezbollah and to the state of Lebanon that we will not allow this to happen.
Now, you say Palestinian factions operating in Lebanon. Are you referring to Hamas?
It could be connected to Hamas, and we're seeing Hamas trying to incite violence throughout the whole area, if it's on social media or if it's really properly sending terrorists throughout different areas. We are continuing our counterterrorism actions where needed. Just recently, we apprehended terrorists that are both affiliated with Hamas and other terrorist organizations that are trying to carry out terrorist activity against Israeli civilians. So again, it could be Hamas, it could be others, but the message is very clear that we will not allow this kind of attacks to be carried out against Israeli civilians.
And we talked about the northern front. Let's move to the southern front. We also saw rockets being fired from Gaza this past week. Are we looking at a potential escalation on the southern front?
The goal of Israel and the IDF is really creating, of course, security and stability. And we have carried out this throughout the last few weeks, both of Ramadan and the Jewish and Christian holidays, in two main ways. One is promoting economic and social measures to promote the civilian situation. And the second thing is counterterrorism activity. And I'm saying that we're carrying out these two in order to stable and make the situation more secure. We hope that the Palestinian terrorist organizations will not escalate the situation and will understand that the way that things are promoting the welfare and the freedom of religion of all is the way to go ahead. And we have carried out both, as I mentioned, counterterrorism actions in order to thwart different threats, but also promoting civilian measures in order to keep the stability and promote it as much as possible. So to your question, I hope we do not see any escalation. If there is, again, it will be only the cause of the terrorist organizations that prefer to choose the violent way and not taking care of the civilians that are living both in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria.
Absolutely. And I mean, we have seen the rockets fired both from Lebanon and from Gaza. Is Israel prepared in the worst case scenario for a two-front war? Is the IDF prepared for such a scenario?
The Israel Defense Forces is continuously preparing for any kind of scenario that we will need to be dealing with in order to protect our civilians and our sovereignty. We very much, as I mentioned, hope not to get there, but if needed, then definitely we are prepared for it.
Now, you mentioned the counterterrorism activities, and we heard reports today that security forces thwarted an attempt by the Islamic Jihad in Gaza to establish infrastructure in Judea and Samaria for manning terrorist attacks in Israel, which was thwarted. Now, after a few deadly weeks in Israel, are we still in a heightened situation of combating terror within Israeli cities?
So in the last few weeks, sadly, we saw 14 civilians that were murdered in terrorist activity. And as I mentioned, we're seeing terrorist activity trying to infiltrate and incite violence all over the areas. And together with the other security agencies, the ISA and the police forces, and of course the IDF, we're working in order to thwart these activities that are trying to be promoted and carried out. Now, we're seeing the continuation of trying, and we're seeing the continuation of us thwarting them. And we hope that this will stop and that we can continue having peaceful holidays for all.
Now, you mentioned the holiday. I mean, what is your message just before Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Independence Day for the people of Israel after such a difficult period of missile launches and terror attacks?
The message is both to the people of Israel and to everyone in the region. We wish everybody to celebrate these holidays in a secure and being able to worship in the way that they wish, in a safe and happy way. And this is what we should be celebrating. This could be a wonderful time for everyone to celebrate. And we wish to see that the stability and the calm is really back into life for here, for everyone to celebrate and enjoy. And we will continue doing what is needed in order to keep the way as it is.
Let's hope so. Lieutenant Colonel Amnon Shefler, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.